The card is real. The flowers are real. Claressa Shields posted the Valentine's gesture, tagged Papoose, and the internet did what the internet has been trained to do. It grabbed one image, zoomed in until every pen stroke looked like a federal case, and turned a romantic post into the newest piece of evidence in a relationship trial that has been running in public for nearly 2 years. But here is the part everybody rushing to call this a forgery missed. There is no publicly documented forensic examination establishing that Papoose did not write that card. No named examiner, no disclosed methodology, no authenticated comparison set, no report. And that gap changes the entire conversation about Papoose, Claressa Shields, Remy Ma, and the way hip-hop gossip now treats a social media screenshot like it came out of a courtroom evidence locker. Because this is no longer only about whether Papoose physically wrote "Love Always" on a flower card. This is about a man whose public identity was built around devotion, a champion boxer whose relationship is constantly being judged through somebody else's marriage, and an audience that has become so used to scandal being monetized that a missing fact can travel faster than a confirmed one. Papoose's reputation is on the line personally. Claressa Shields' credibility and public image are on the line culturally. And the bigger system, the blogs, reaction channels, repost pages, clipped-out commentary and engagement machine, is on the line because it keeps rewarding the loudest theory before anybody asks the simplest question: what do we actually know? And when we get to the timeline of public posts, the divorce filings that Papoose publicly referenced, and the way an unverified handwriting claim can become fact after enough reposts, you are going to see why the rose card was never the real story. The card is the prop. The real story is the machine that turned it into a weapon. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Let's put the situation back on solid ground, because the online version of this story has been moving so fast that people are blending public statements, allegations, memes, edited clips, relationship opinions, and pure fan fiction into one giant messy smoothie. And that smoothie has somehow become evidence for people who have never met Papoose, Claressa Shields, or Remy Ma. Papoose and Remy Ma were one of hip-hop's most recognizable couples for years. Their story carried real emotional weight for a lot of fans. He publicly supported her through difficult periods in her life. They built a family. Their marriage became part of their brands, their public image, and the culture's idea of what loyalty in hip-hop could look like. That is why the breakup drama landed differently. This was not some random celebrity pairing that people forgot about 3 weeks later. These were two people fans had watched, rooted for, criticized, and held up as symbols. Then the relationship became publicly contentious. In December 2024, Remy Ma posted alleged messages involving Papoose and Claressa Shields and publicly accused him of having an affair. Claressa responded publicly, while Papoose later accused Remy of repeated infidelity and said he wanted a divorce. Those are public accusations and public responses, not findings from a court, not a complete private timeline, and not proof that every claim made during an emotional fallout was accurate. But they created the environment we are still living in now. Every post, every interview, every song, every image of Papoose and Claressa is treated like it has to answer every unresolved question from the marriage. That's the first thing people need to understand. The rose card controversy did not begin with a rose card. It began with an audience that had already decided this relationship had to be either a love story or a scam, either a victory lap or a betrayal, either Claressa won or Remy won. And real life does not work like a comment section tournament bracket. People separate. Relationships end badly. Divorce proceedings can take time. People say ugly things when they are hurt. And social media turns every moment into a side-by-side graphic with dramatic music behind it. Claressa Shields has consistently rejected the framing that she is with somebody's husband. In a July 2025 radio interview reported by Complex, she said Papoose had filed for divorce and described their relationship as serious. She also acknowledged that divorce takes time. That does not settle every moral argument viewers may have about timelines, nor does it erase Remy Ma's perspective. But it is Claressa's public position, and it matters because too many people are arguing against a version of her that they invented instead of the actual words she said. Now add the Valentine's post into that environment. Claressa shares flowers. The card is attributed to Papoose. The internet sees something tender. Then the rumor mill sees a chance to put on a tiny detective hat, pull out a magnifying glass from the toy aisle, and announce it has solved a case that nobody actually submitted to a lab. Suddenly, people are treating handwriting as if it is an exact digital password. That doesn't look like his writing. A florist wrote it. She wrote it herself. An assistant made the whole thing. This proves the relationship is staged. Stop. Does everybody understand how wild that leap is? A photo of handwriting is not an authenticated handwriting examination. A commenter saying 2 capital letters look different is not a forensic finding. A reaction channel putting slow zooms over a rose card does not transform a theory into evidence. And that matters because the claim being made is not harmless. Saying a public figure posted a false romantic gesture, forged a note, or manufactured proof of love is a serious allegation about conduct and intent. It cannot be treated as confirmed just because it performs well in a headline. That is the central truth here. The most explosive version of the story is also the least substantiated version of the story. And I know the comment section is already warming up its engines. I know somebody is typing, why are you defending them? Nobody has to defend a relationship from criticism. Public figures post publicly. The public responds publicly. That is part of the deal. But there is a massive difference between saying, I don't buy this, and saying, this is proven fake. One is an opinion. The other is a claim of fact. The line between them should not disappear just because the algorithm pays extra for mess. Let's work through what is actually visible and verifiable, because this is where the story gets more interesting than the rumor. The first piece of surface evidence is the post itself. Claressa's Valentine's message publicly thanked Papoose for being thoughtful. There were flowers and a card. That is what the post demonstrates. She received or presented a Valentine's arrangement that was publicly attributed to Papoose. It does not demonstrate who physically held the pen. It does not demonstrate who arranged the delivery. It does not establish whether a florist, an assistant, Papoose, or anyone else wrote the card. The post gives us a public image. The internet built the rest. And honestly, that should be the first red flag for everyone. We are in an era where people will watch a 10-second clip with no context and decide they understand a 5-year relationship. They will see one photograph and produce an entire production budget, a secret publicist, a fake florist, a handwriting conspiracy, and a PowerPoint presentation called Why Love is a Psyop. Meanwhile, the actual evidence is a bouquet and a caption. The second visible piece is the broader pattern of Papoose and Claressa publicly supporting one another. This is not a relationship that appeared out of nowhere on Valentine's Day. Claressa and Papoose have repeatedly spoken and appeared publicly as a couple. In 2025, Claressa said on The Breakfast Club that she and Papoose were in regular contact, describing a relationship where they spoke and FaceTimed consistently. People are free to question any public couple's presentation, but the documented public record is not limited to one card. Then in a 2026 interview, Claressa described Papoose as a source of support and discussed walking out with him for a championship fight in Flint. Again, that does not give strangers access to their private lives. It does not certify every romantic gesture. It does show that their public relationship has existed across more than one stage-looking image on a social platform. It has included interviews, appearances, sports moments, and repeated acknowledgments by both people. That matters because the card conspiracy depends on the idea that the card is the load-bearing wall of the whole relationship. It isn't. The card is just a card. If it was written by Papoose, fine. If a florist wrote it at someone's request, that is not unusual for a gift delivery. If an assistant arranged it, that would not automatically mean the sentiment was fabricated. And if nobody can verify who wrote it, then nobody should pretend they can. The third piece of surface evidence is the public divorce discussion itself. Papoose publicly said he wanted a divorce during the 2024 fallout. Later reporting cited documents he shared that he said showed he filed for divorce. Claressa has referred to the divorce process publicly as ongoing. This is important because people keep saying somebody's husband as though there is no public record of separation, conflict, divorce intentions, and a pending legal process. That phrase is emotionally powerful, but it cannot replace context. Now, should people care about the timeline? Of course. Can fans have moral reactions to public allegations? Absolutely. Is it fair for Remy Ma to express pain or anger about a marriage ending? Yes. But the reason we need the timeline is not to crown a winner. It is to stop turning every new post into a fake trial where the verdict was written before the evidence was introduced. The fourth piece of visible evidence is how quickly the story has become entertainment for outside players. In early 2026, 50 Cent publicly mocked Papoose and Claressa in a social media spat. Papoose responded with AI-generated parody videos aimed at 50. It was loud, petty, ridiculous, and exactly the kind of side drama that thrives because it turns a painful personal situation into a shareable spectator sport. The important part is not who had the funniest caption. The important part is what it reveals. Once a relationship becomes public content, everybody gets invited to turn it into a joke, a faction, or a business opportunity. That is why I need everybody to sit with this for a second. A rose card can be discussed. A post can be questioned. But the card did not arrive in a vacuum. It arrived inside a media ecosystem that has already trained people to expect maximum scandal and minimum nuance. It arrived after accusations, interviews, public arguments, rapper reactions, memes, fan wars, podcasts, and competing narratives. So when someone says, the handwriting looks off, people are not hearing a limited observation. They're hearing what they already wanted to hear. The whole thing is fake. But what does the card actually prove? Nothing beyond the fact that it appeared in a post. And what does it disprove? Also nothing. That is the honest answer. And I think we need to set the record straight on what people are actually reacting to here. They're not really reacting to ink. They're reacting to a relationship they think is an insult to a relationship they once rooted for. They're reacting to the collapse of the Papoose and Remy image. They're reacting to Claressa's confidence. They're reacting to years of gossip being compressed into one bouquet. The handwriting debate is just the latest excuse for a much older argument. And oh, do I have more for you? Because if the surface-level evidence tells us how the story looks online, the cultural evidence tells us why it keeps getting worse every time somebody opens an app. The people calling this the card that exposed everything are about to be disappointed, because the deeper you go, the more obvious it becomes that the real exposure is happening to the gossip machine itself. And to everyone in the comment section preparing a 20-slide handwriting dissertation based on a blurry Instagram screenshot, save some battery. The next part is about the public statements, the diss culture, the interviews, and why each new reaction is getting used as fuel for a story nobody has fully proven. The first cultural evidence is Remy Ma's very public response to Papoose and Claressa. Remy did not keep her frustrations private. She posted alleged messages, made allegations, and criticized both Papoose and Claressa during the dispute. Her words shaped the story because Remy is not a random observer. She was Papoose's spouse, the mother of his child, and a person whose relationship with him was publicly celebrated for years. When she spoke, fans naturally paid attention. But the cultural shift happened when fans began treating one side's allegations as a complete documentary. Emotional posts can reveal real pain. They can also be incomplete, reactive, selective, and made in the middle of conflict. That is not a criticism of Remy specifically. That is true for every celebrity breakup in history. Public arguments are almost never neutral fact-finding missions. They are people attempting to be heard, to protect themselves, to win the narrative, or to process hurt in real time. Papoose's response added another layer. He accused Remy of cheating repeatedly and said he had sought divorce. He also made claims about having written much of her music, including Conceited. Those remarks became instant ammunition for the audience, because now the breakup was no longer only about romance. It became a debate about authorship, career credit, masculinity, loyalty, status, and who had supposedly built whose legacy. And that is where the culture does something exhausting. It takes one relationship dispute and turns it into 7 separate sports leagues. Now people are arguing about who cheated first, who filed first, who wrote which verse, who moved on first, who looks happier, who had better captions, who gets blamed for the collapse, and apparently who has the most trustworthy lowercase letters. The breakup becomes content because every angle can be monetized. Every answer produces another reaction. Every reaction produces another clip. Every clip produces another comment war. The second cultural evidence is Claressa's willingness to speak for herself. Whether people agree with her or not, she has not exactly been hiding. She responded to Remy's posts in 2024. She addressed the relationship on The Breakfast Club in 2025. She again discussed the divorce process in a 2025 radio interview. That is a key detail because a lot of the online coverage talks about Claressa as if she is a silent background character in somebody else's story. She is not. She is a world champion athlete with her own career, her own audience, and her own public statements. Now, I understand the counterargument. Some viewers will say, but public statements do not prove the relationship is healthy. Correct. No interview can prove that. Couples can present a polished image while dealing with private stress. Public affection does not equal private perfection. That is a fair and necessary point. But here is where the counterargument gets abused. The fact that a post cannot prove love does not mean it proves fraud. The fact that Papoose and Claressa are public does not mean every display is a performance. The fact that their relationship began amid controversy does not make every romantic gesture automatically fake. Skepticism is healthy. Certainty without evidence is not. The third cultural evidence is the way Claressa's actual professional accomplishments keep getting dragged into relationship commentary. This is a two-time Olympic gold medalist and an undisputed heavyweight champion. Her career has carried historic significance in women's boxing. Yet online discussions often reduce her to Papoose's girlfriend whenever the relationship drama is trending. That should bother people regardless of where they stand on the couple. Claressa has a body of work that exists independently of any man, any marriage, any card, and any gossip page. That is not a request for people to stop criticizing public figures. It is a request to keep proportions. When an athlete has spent years breaking barriers, becoming a champion, selling fights, and expanding the profile of women's boxing, the culture should be capable of discussing her career without pretending a Valentine's post is her most important achievement. That is lazy commentary. It is easier to debate a flower card than it is to talk about what she has accomplished in a sport that has historically struggled to give women equal attention. And the fourth cultural evidence is the reaction economy around the controversy itself. Think about how many people have a direct financial incentive for the rose card rumor to remain unresolved. Reaction channels need theories. Blog pages need suspense. Fan accounts need a side to defend. Rival personalities need a punchline. Even people who dislike all parties involved still benefit from the drama because outrage is social currency. Nobody gets a viral post from saying, "We cannot verify who wrote this card." But that is often the most accurate sentence in the room. That is why rumor content thrives. It turns an absence of information into an invitation. A blank space becomes a conspiracy. A quiet moment becomes deafening silence. A private choice becomes proof. And a card that could have been written by any number of people becomes a supposed smoking gun. Can we have the real conversation now? The word forgery does not belong in this story unless there is actual evidence that someone intentionally created a false document to deceive others. A romantic card posted online is not automatically a legal document, and a handwriting observation from strangers is not a forensic conclusion. If a named, qualified document examiner publicly released an analysis based on properly authenticated samples and explained the limitations, that would be a different conversation. But that is not the public record we have. The fifth cultural clue is what people do when they are confronted with that distinction. They often pivot. They say, okay, maybe it is not technically proven, but you know what it looks like. And that right there is the engine of the entire thing. The appearance becomes more important than the evidence. The vibe becomes more powerful than the facts. The conclusion comes first, and then every tiny detail gets recruited to support it. The internet does not want a nuanced answer because nuance does not let you pick a team. Maybe Papoose wrote it, maybe someone else prepared it, and we cannot know from a photo is not a satisfying chant at the fan war arena. It does not help the Remy loyalists. It does not help the Papoose loyalists. It does not help the Claressa supporters. It does not help the content merchants selling 30-minute breakdowns of one capital A. But it is still the honest answer. And now we have to make the hard pivot because this is where the story stops being only about celebrities and becomes about the system that manufactures certainty. Forget the flowers for a moment. Forget the zoom-ins. Forget the handwriting detectives with their honorary degrees from Screenshot University. The real question is why this kind of story is so profitable, why the biggest allegations are usually the least checked, and why public relationships have become raw material for an industry that gets paid every time trust breaks down. Here is the pattern interrupt. This is not a handwriting story. It is a narrative ownership story. The first systemic angle is platform incentives. Social platforms reward engagement, and engagement is often highest when content creates emotion quickly, anger, mockery, tribal loyalty, fear of being fooled, or the feeling that you are getting inside information. A post saying, "The note may have been written by an assistant," is calm. A post saying, "Papoose exposed, the card is fake," is combustible. One invites thought. The other invites a fight. The algorithm does not care whether the claim is verified. It cares whether people stay, react, share, argue, and return. That does not mean every creator is intentionally lying. It means the system naturally pushes people toward the most dramatic framing. If a softer interpretation exists, it gets treated as boring. If a stronger interpretation can be implied, it gets framed as courageous truth-telling. That is why the language matters. Reportedly matters. Allegedly matters. Based on the available public evidence matters. Those phrases are not legal decorations. They tell the audience where the floor is. They distinguish a real document from a rumor, a public statement from a verified fact, and analysis from accusation. The second systemic angle is the collapse of source hierarchy. In a healthier media environment, an original public post, a direct interview, a court filing, and a named news report would be separated from speculation. Today, a repost can strip away the original context in seconds. Somebody records a video reacting to a clip. Another page reposts that reaction. A third page posts a screenshot of the reaction with a caption that upgrades maybe into confirmed. By the time the story gets to the average viewer, nobody remembers where it began. This is how a supposed forensic analysis can appear out of nowhere. A person may say they consulted an expert. Then another person says, an expert confirmed. Then a headline says, expert exposes. But who is the expert? What are their qualifications? What known samples were used? Were the samples verified as genuine? Was the questioned image high resolution enough? Was the original card examined? Were alternative explanations considered? Without answers, you do not have a conclusion. You have content. And this is not a small technicality. A credible forensic document examination involves more than looking at a few letter shapes in a social media image. The quality of the questioned document matters. The availability and authenticity of comparison samples matter. Natural variation in a person's handwriting matters. Writing conditions matter. The analyst's credentials, process, and statement of limitations matter. Anybody telling you handwriting can be declared scientifically precise from a cropped online photograph without a transparent process is selling confidence, not necessarily evidence. Does that mean handwriting analysis is useless? No. It means real fields should not be impersonated for engagement. There are qualified professionals in document examination. That makes it even more important not to turn every online handwriting opinion into a pretend lab report. The third systemic angle is celebrity relationship branding. Public couples have always been part of entertainment. The difference now is that every affectionate gesture is also a potential asset. A birthday post can be a headline. A flower arrangement can be a debate. A comment can become a news cycle. A date night can become evidence for supporters and evidence against them at the exact same time. That pressure creates a trap. If a couple shares nothing, people say they are hiding. If they share affection, people say it is staged. If they deny rumors, people say they are defensive. If they stay quiet, people call it suspicious. There is no move that cannot be spun. And once a relationship has been branded as controversial, the audience may start interpreting every act through the most cynical lens available. The rose card is a perfect example. A simple gift becomes a test of authenticity. People decide the card must carry the weight of the entire relationship. But a relationship is not authenticated by stationery. No couple's private reality can be confirmed or disproved through roses. The fact that people believe otherwise tells you how deeply social media has trained us to confuse artifacts with truth. The fourth systemic angle is gendered double standards. Claressa has been criticized in ways that go beyond normal relationship commentary. Because she is a woman, a fighter, outspoken, successful, and visibly confident, she becomes an especially convenient target for people who want to turn her into a caricature. The same culture that celebrates toughness in male rappers sometimes punishes it in women athletes. The same people who demand that public figures stand on business get uncomfortable when a woman publicly says what she believes. That does not mean Claressa is above criticism. Nobody is. It means criticism should remain connected to facts, not stereotypes. Calling a woman desperate because she posts flowers is not analysis. Calling her relationship fake because she is visible is not evidence. Reducing a champion to a villain role in a breakup narrative she did not create is not cultural insight. It is content laziness wearing a detective costume. The fifth systemic angle is the commercial value of unresolved pain. Let's be honest, a tidy, humane explanation does not feed the machine. This appears to be a difficult separation with conflicting public accounts, and a new relationship under intense scrutiny is probably close to reality. It is also not going to produce hundreds of reaction videos. But the rose card conspiracy can keep going forever. It can have sequels, fake updates, body language analysis, handwriting analysis, anonymous source analysis, and a brand new theory every time any of the three people posts online. That is the grift. Not necessarily the flowers. Not necessarily the card. The grift is pretending that endless speculation is accountability. The grift is using the language of investigation while avoiding the responsibilities of investigation. The grift is making the audience believe every new clip is the final missing piece when the creator has no intention of ever closing the case, because an unsolved story performs better than an answered one. And that brings us to the major truth bomb. The most revealing thing about the rose card controversy is not whether Papoose wrote the note. It is that thousands of people were ready to use an unverified handwriting claim as proof that Claressa Shields had manufactured her relationship, even though the public record does not support that certainty. That is the reveal. The card is not the smoking gun. The reaction is. Think about the speed of the escalation. A public Valentine's post becomes a handwriting debate. A handwriting debate becomes a claim of forgery. A claim of forgery becomes a claim that Claressa stages affection. Then that becomes a claim that the relationship itself is fake. Then that gets tied back to every unresolved accusation from the Papoose and Remy Ma split. One unverified leap becomes a ladder, and people climb it because they already wanted to arrive at the roof. That is not forensic analysis. That is confirmation bias with background music. And I want to be precise here. Maybe Papoose wrote the note. Maybe a florist or assistant wrote it on his behalf. Maybe the note was prepared in a way that neither Papoose nor Claressa expected would be dissected online. The public does not know. There is no credible public basis to state any of those possibilities as fact. But there is one thing we can say with confidence. The internet turned uncertainty into a weapon. The consequences are bigger than one couple. Once audiences decide that a photograph can prove private intent, nobody gets to have an ordinary gesture anymore. Every gift must be authenticated. Every caption must be audited. Every expression of affection must survive an amateur investigation. And the more controversial a person is, the lower the standard of proof becomes before people feel entitled to call them fake. That is catastrophic for public discourse because it rewards the people who are least careful. The person who pauses, checks sources, identifies what is known, and acknowledges uncertainty looks slower. The person who screams, exposed, gets the clicks. The creator who says, we need a named expert and original evidence, can get accused of being a defender. The creator who declares guilt from a screenshot gets treated like a truth teller. But a truth teller does not need to manufacture certainty. The truth is sturdy enough to admit what it does not know. This is why the rose card story matters. It is a small object carrying a huge lesson. In the social media era, people are not only consuming relationships. They are consuming interpretations of relationships, and the interpretation often becomes more powerful than the people involved. The audience does not simply watch the drama. It helps write it. And there is another part people are missing. If you actually care about Remy Ma, you do not need to turn every rumor about Claressa into proven fact to acknowledge that Remy's public pain and frustration are real. If you care about Papoose, you do not need to pretend the public controversy around the separation never happened. If you support Claressa, you do not have to claim their relationship is perfect to say she deserves the same evidence standard as anyone else. The sides can be complicated. The timeline can be painful. The public statements can be messy. And a card can still be just a card. That is the real reckoning, not the handwriting. The habit of using incomplete evidence to make permanent judgments about people. Now let's land this where it belongs. Claressa Shields is still the person with a championship career, a documented record of achievement, and a public identity that should not be reduced to one relationship controversy. Papoose is still a rapper whose career, reputation, and family history are more complicated than the internet's favorite meme format can hold. Remy Ma is still a major artist and a person navigating a public separation that has clearly carried emotional consequences. None of these facts require us to pretend anybody is flawless. They require us to stop treating people's lives like a game where the loudest fan account gets to write the official history. The right person still wins here, and in this case the right person is not necessarily one partner over another. The winner is the person who refuses to let gossip replace evidence. The winner is the viewer who can distinguish between a public post and a proven claim. The winner is the audience member who says, I can have an opinion without inventing a fact. Because look at the contrast. While the rumor mill is measuring pen strokes through compressed social media pixels, Claressa Shields is still carrying the weight of a historic boxing career. While people are trying to build a conspiracy out of roses, the actual public record is sitting in interviews, public statements, and documented events for anybody willing to read more than a headline. One side is selling drama from a screenshot. The other is living a real life under a microscope. And that is not to say viewers should ignore what they see. Watch the posts. Listen to the interviews. Remember the timeline. Challenge statements when they conflict. But do not become the kind of audience that claims a case is closed when the evidence has not even been introduced. I said this in past videos. Whenever a celebrity story starts spiraling, the first viral version is often the cleanest version, not the truest one. It is designed to fit in a caption. It is designed to make you react before you think. And once it spreads, everyone starts treating the original framing as reality even when the details do not hold. The rose card controversy is the perfect example. The neat version is, the handwriting proves the whole relationship is fake. The real version is much more complicated and much more honest. There is a controversial public relationship, a history of competing allegations, a Valentine's post, and an online theory that has not been publicly substantiated by a transparent forensic analysis. That may not hit as hard in a thumbnail, but it is what the evidence supports. So yes, the card may keep getting reposted. Yes, people will keep zooming in. Yes, the same accounts that called it fake yesterday may call the next post evidence tomorrow if it helps their favorite side. But the bigger narrative has already changed. The people paying attention can now see the mechanism. They can see how the outrage gets built, how the theory gets upgraded, and how the algorithm turns a private relationship into an endless content factory. This is only the start, because there are at least 2 developments worth watching without turning them into fanfiction. First, Papoose and Remy Ma's divorce process and any public statements or filings connected to it will continue to shape how people interpret the timeline. If either party provides new direct documentation or a detailed statement, that is meaningful because it comes closer to the actual situation than a reposted rumor. Second, Claressa Shields' career remains the larger story. Her fights, championship ambitions, public interviews, and place in women's boxing deserve to be covered as more than background noise for relationship discourse. She has said hip-hop and boxing have shaped one another in her life, and her public profile sits at that intersection. That means every new chapter will pull in both sports fans and hip-hop fans, hopefully with more care than a handwriting debate deserves. And if a genuine, named forensic examiner ever publicly releases a transparent analysis of the actual card using authenticated materials, then we can revisit that specific evidence on its merits. Until then, treat the forgery claim as what it is, an unverified online allegation, not a confirmed conclusion. Stay locked in, because the next video is about the part of this whole situation that almost nobody is separating properly: Papoose's public claims about authorship, Remy Ma's legacy, and why ghostwriting allegations in a breakup becomes so powerful even when the audience never sees the full creative record. One claim, one long marriage, one battle for narrative control, and a question that could change how people read every public statement that came after. You do not want to miss that one.